So I'm turning to TikTok because I feel like it always has the answers and I really need some advice right now. So what do you do whenever you feel like God is just being silent? Whenever you're used to him talking to you and he's just not right now?
December 28th, 2024. Morning in the city of Brandon, Mississippi. Vehicles belonging to relatives pulled up at the Sheffield family's private residence. Loved ones had been trying to reach the couple, but Jennifer's and Brandon's phones were silent. On the driveway near the garage, the family's cars were parked, a sign they likely were at home, yet no one answered the knocks at the front door. Growing increasingly concerned over the lack of contact, the relatives called the emergency response service and requested a well-being check on the occupants. Officers from the Brandon Police Department responded to the request. They surveyed the exterior of the home. The windows were intact, the doors were locked, and there were no signs of forced entry or unauthorized access. With no indication of how the couple might have left the house and no answer from inside, the police made the decision to enter. Inside, the responding patrol officers were met with silence. Moving through the rooms, they came upon the bodies of 30-year-old Jennifer and 40-year-old Brandon. Both were found deceased. The initial examination of the scene revealed clear indications of a violent incident. To understand the context of what unfolded in Rankin County, it helps to rewind to a time before the police tape was stretched across the property. The city of Brandon, where the couple lived, is considered one of the top places to live in Mississippi. It's a quiet suburb of Jackson with a population of about 25,000, where incidents like this are exceptionally rare. Within this atmosphere of safety and prosperity was where 30-year-old Jennifer Sheffield built her life and career. Born on September 9, 1994, Jennifer devoted her life to medicine and science. Her professional journey was marked by serious academic accomplishments. She earned a Bachelor of Science in Biochemistry and went on to receive a Master of Medical Science in Biology. Those around her knew her as a person of high intelligence. Jennifer didn't stop at her achievements and planned to continue her education to become a doctor. In everyday life, she put her knowledge to use working as a nurse in the emergency room at the Mississippi Medical Center. ER work demands high stress, tolerance, and quick decision-making. Hospital colleagues said they always looked forward to shifts with Jennifer, noting her professionalism. The dean of the Mississippi College, where she completed her graduate studies, described her as an exceptionally capable student who pursued knowledge with passion. Outside the hospital walls, Jennifer's life appeared full and purposeful. She was active on social media, especially on TikTok, where she shared her hobbies with followers. In her videos, she showed herself gardening and preparing various meals, offering glimpses of a warm domestic life. Friends and family described her as a bright spirit, someone passionately committed to helping others. Faith was also an important part of her life. Those close to her spoke of her deep love for God. No one who saw this successful, educated woman saving lives in the ER could have imagined that soon she would need help herself. Living in that Brandon home with Jennifer was her husband, 40-year-old Brandon Sheffield. Born on September 22, 1984, in Mobile, Alabama, Brandon fit the image of a stable, suburban life. To the outside world, he appeared to be a well-adjusted man with traditional interests. In his free time, he loved working on cars, going fishing, and playing disc golf. People who knew him described his personality in overwhelmingly positive terms. He was the kind of guy who lit up the room, always trying to get a laugh and create good memories. But while he had hobbies, what mattered most to Brandon was his daughters. From a previous relationship, he had two, Gracie and Kylie. According to his family, he was a devoted father who cherished his girls deeply. It was time with them that brought him genuine happiness. This image of a devoted family man was echoed by Jennifer's friends as well. Faye, one of Jennifer's closest friends, had known the couple since the very beginning of their relationship. Over the years, she watched their bond grow and always spoke highly of Brandon. She called him a great guy and said she respected the way he treated Jennifer. According to Faye, there were never any red flags, no signs of aggressive behavior, no reason for concern. Among their circle, Brandon was the fun-loving partner, supportive and kind. The Sheffield family story began nearly a decade before things took a tragic turn. This wasn't your average college romance. When Jennifer and Brandon met in the mid-2000s, she was still a young woman focused on her studies, while Brandon was already well into adulthood, with an established life. There was a 10-year age gap between them, but more importantly, Brandon already had a daughter, Gracie, from a previous marriage. From the very start, Jennifer knew what she was stepping into. She understood that Brandon was a father with real responsibilities, and she embraced it. Jennifer didn't shy away from the role. She found common ground with Gracie, and over time, the two formed a warm and trusting bond. Not long after, Jennifer and Brandon welcomed a daughter of their own, Kylie. From age 20 to 30, Jennifer fully committed herself to her family. She grew into her roles as a wife and a mother, all while pursuing a demanding career in healthcare. Friends and neighbors saw them as a strong family, raising their daughters in an environment filled with love and stability. But the first public crack in that perfect picture didn't come from gossip or police reports. It came from Jennifer herself. Amid the usual TikToks about gardening and cooking, one video stood out. Gone was the cheerful tone. In its place was a quiet plea. Jennifer reached out to her followers, not with another homemaking tip, but with a request for help. She was facing a deep emotional struggle. In that recording, Jennifer asked her audience a direct and deeply personal question. What do you do when it feels like God is silent? She explained that she was used to feeling guidance from a higher power, but at that moment, all she was experiencing was quiet. In her monologue, she spoke about a life path that once seemed like the only possible road forward, yet kept placing obstacles in her way, becoming heavier and more difficult with each step. On camera, Jennifer openly admitted that she had recently come to a realization. Her own plans no longer seemed to matter. Searching for meaning, she quoted a familiar phrase, "The teacher is always silent during the test." That moment captured a stark reality. A woman seen by others as a successful professional and a happy mother was now turning to strangers online for answers. Jennifer asked for advice on what to do when the familiar road leads to a dead end, and she reflected on the possibility that it might be time to change direction entirely. The video remained online as quiet evidence that long before the physical outcome, she was already searching for a way to reshape her life. In the fall of 2024, the private lives of the Sheffields reached a point where reality could no longer be concealed. The couple made the decision to divorce. Although they continued living under the same roof, their social status shifted in a way that was visible to everyone. Jennifer and Brandon almost simultaneously updated their personal Facebook profiles. Under relationship status, both accounts now read single. On that platform, this doesn't happen automatically. If one partner changes their status, the other's does not update without deliberate action. Each of them had to enter their profile settings and manually confirm the separation. It was a public declaration that the relationship had ended. To friends and acquaintances, this felt like the final line being drawn. In the modern world, a relationship status change on social media is often viewed as an official statement. Both spouses made that choice consciously, defining the boundaries of a new reality while still sharing the same home. On the surface, daily life looked unchanged, but the digital record marked the decision as irreversible. This wasn't an emotional impulse. It was a coordinated step taken by two adults preparing for separate lives. The reason for the divorce wasn't a dramatic scandal, infidelity, or a sudden blow-up. It was a quiet erosion that had been unfolding for years. Friends Jennifer confided in noticed the same pattern again and again. She was exhausted. When they first met, the 10-year age gap felt like a source of stability, something that made Brandon seem reliable. But a decade later, the dynamic had flipped. Jennifer, armed with 2 degrees and working in intensive care, had become the driving force of the family. She was constantly studying, pushing herself forward, setting new goals, and planning to become a physician. Brandon, according to those close to them, remained the eternal guy, kind, fun, and likable, but stuck in the same place. The conflict grew out of ambition and personal growth. Jennifer had outgrown the marriage. What felt comfortable to her at 20, the role of a warm, supportive wife beside a fun-loving husband, felt restrictive by the time she turned 30. She was carrying the emotional and everyday load, raising her daughters and working herself to exhaustion, while Brandon remained firmly inside his comfort zone. In private conversations, Jennifer admitted that she felt lonely, even while being married. She wanted a partner who would grow alongside her, not someone who constantly needed emotional maintenance. For her, the decision to divorce wasn't about destruction. It was about shedding weight and finally being able to breathe. She didn't want a battle. She simply wanted to move forward in a direction Brandon either couldn't or wouldn't follow. That exact feeling, the sense that a wife is becoming too independent, too successful, and no longer dependent, is often a trigger for men with Brandon's personality type. His perfect picture wasn't falling apart because she found someone else. It was falling apart because she found herself. On December 10th, 2024, just 18 days before law enforcement would seal off the house in Brandon, Jennifer posted a detailed video message on TikTok. The recording was meant to give a clear account of what was happening inside the family and to shut down speculation. On camera, she appeared calm and composed, and her tone ran counter to every stereotype associated with painful breakups. She described Brandon's behavior during the divorce process with a single word: incredible. According to Jennifer, the couple was maintaining complete civility for the sake of their daughters. She emphasized that they were acting as a team, working together to get through this phase with as little harm as possible. She laid out the specific terms of their agreement. Property and assets were being split evenly, 50-50. There were no disputes, no court battles, no conflicts over material possessions. She spoke confidently about Brandon continuing to financially support his daughters, something that eased part of the burden she was preparing to carry. The heart of her message wasn't about the past, it was about the future. Jennifer told her followers that she was preparing to become a single mother and for the first time in her life rely solely on her own income. She openly discussed the financial challenges ahead: purchasing a new home, managing a mortgage, and the need for strict budgeting. She asked her audience for advice on saving money and shared the steps she had already taken: cutting out coffee shop drinks, switching to caffeine tablets, doing her own hair, and handling manicures at home. The video painted the picture of a woman methodically building a new reality. She spoke about everyday details, interest rates, and ways to save dollars, showing complete readiness for an independent life. Her plans included moving and setting up a home of her own, signaling long-term intent. The recording captured a moment when Jennifer Sheffield believed the worst part of the divorce was already behind her, and that ahead lay a difficult but safe path toward independence. The December 10th video is still online. In the footage, Jennifer appears calm. She talks about plans for the future and refers to her husband as an incredible person. But investigators and specialists who study domestic aggression hear something very different beneath statements like these. Exactly 18 days pass between the publication of that video and the moment law enforcement arrives at the home in Brandon. Experts refer to this window as the highest risk period. Jennifer's words about a peaceful separation stand in sharp contrast to how the story ends. Investigative practice shows that when a woman publicly praises her partner during a breakup, it is often a protective response. Behavioral psychology describes this as a strategy of smoothing the edges. The goal is to preserve the image of the family and, more importantly, to avoid provoking aggression from a man she is still living with under the same roof. Jennifer Sheffield and Brandon Sheffield, despite changing their Facebook statuses to single, continued to share the same home. The period when someone is actively preparing to leave is considered the most dangerous stage of a relationship. According to justice system statistics, the risk of a fatal outcome for a woman increases dramatically at the moment she makes it clear she is leaving for good. Brandon's sense of control begins to slip away. His familiar routine, his reputation as the life of the party, and his stable domestic world start to collapse. Jennifer, openly planning the purchase of her own home and a single mother budget, is making one thing clear through her actions: there will be no turning back. Behind the closed doors of that Mississippi house, a quiet escalation unfolds. We don't know the exact words exchanged during those 2.5 weeks. There were no interior cameras, but the facts speak for themselves. The perfect divorce Jennifer described to thousands of followers existed only online. In reality, the tension kept building. Brandon watched as his wife grew more distant, more independent, and moved forward with paperwork and plans. The carefully maintained image presented to friends and social media no longer matched what was happening inside the home. Commenters praised the couple for their maturity and wisdom. People believed in the narrative of a calm, respectful separation. But inside the house, that script wasn't playing out. The control Brandon once held over the family was gone. 18 days of silence ended not with Jennifer moving into a new place, but with relatives making calls that went unanswered. To understand what officers encountered when they entered the house on December 28th, investigators had to rewind the timeline and compare the sequence of events with the conclusions of the medical examiner. What looked like quiet suburban stillness from the outside turned out to be the site of a final reckoning. Detectives who arrived after the doors were forced open quickly ruled out robbery or an outside attack. The locks were intact. There were no signs of forced entry on the windows. Forensic specialists documented what they call a closed scene crime. Only 2 people were inside the house. According to the official coroner's report and ballistic analysis, the events followed a crime self-harm scenario. Brandon Sheffield was identified as the sole initiator of the aggression. Jennifer Sheffield had no realistic opportunity to defend herself or escape. The reconstruction shows that the fatal incident involving Jennifer occurred while she was inside the home. Investigators established a clear sequence of gunshots. The weapon was in Brandon's hands. The first shots were directed at Jennifer. Experts concluded that the injuries were incompatible with life. After the crime was committed, Brandon Sheffield turned the weapon on himself, bringing the incident to a close through self-harm. Law enforcement found his body near Jennifer's. The placement of shell casings and the nature of powder residue confirmed that no third party was involved in this tragedy. Detectives linked this outburst of aggression to a loss of control, indirectly reflected in the divorce documents. The legal process initiated by Jennifer involved the division of property and custody arrangements, but Brandon's physical actions brought that process to an irreversible end. The entire image of a perfect divorce carefully presented on social media collapsed in the reality of a single night. Brandon, who was losing influence over Jennifer's life with every signed document, reasserted total control in the only way left to him, through brutal behavior. What followed after the police closed the case shifted public attention from forensics to ethics. Once the required procedures at the medical examiner's office were completed, the bodies of Jennifer and Brandon were released to their families for burial. The family made the decision not to separate the farewell ceremonies. A joint memorial service for both spouses was scheduled for the same day and at the same location. Organizers selected a local funeral home where memorial displays were arranged in a shared hall. This decision, to hold a combined farewell for a woman whose life was taken and the man who committed the crime, became public through photographs and eyewitness accounts. Upon entering the hall, attendees saw two memorial tables. The contrast between them was immediate and later documented in images that circulated online. Brandon's memorial was an expansive display. The table was filled with portraits, fishing photos, images with friends, and sports memorabilia. The arrangement painted a picture of an active, well-liked man whose life appeared full and dynamic. Just a few feet away stood Jennifer's table. It held an urn and only a small number of photographs. Compared to her husband's display, Jennifer's memorial appeared strikingly modest and sparse. Visually, it created the impression that Brandon was the central figure of the service, while Jennifer was placed in a secondary role. When these images surfaced online, the reaction from those following the case was immediate. Social media users and forum members left thousands of comments expressing disbelief at the joint memorial. The core criticism focused on the ethical imbalance. Commenters pointed out the contradiction of honoring in nearly the same space, and at the same time, both a woman whose life was taken and the man who pulled the trigger. A separate wave of criticism focused on the memorial tables themselves. The stark simplicity of Jennifer's display, set against the abundance of photos honoring Brandon, was interpreted by the public as a sign of disrespect toward the victim on the part of those who organized the service. Viewers wrote that the family appeared to be mourning the fun-loving guy and devoted father, while overlooking the fact that it was his actions that led to two coffins. Online communities accused relatives of trying to normalize Brandon's image and erase the context of domestic aggression, even during a moment meant for mourning. To understand the true mechanics of what happened on December 28, 2024, it's necessary to set emotions aside and turn to hard facts, timelines, timestamps, and forensic conclusions. What looked to the outside world like the sudden disappearance of a married couple became, for experts, a clear sequence of events that unfolded over just a few morning hours. December 28, 2024, in Brandon, Mississippi, began like an ordinary Saturday morning after Christmas. The sun rose over a quiet suburb, lighting up a home that from the outside looked like a stronghold of family stability. Behind windows still decorated for the holidays, a day was beginning that was meant to be another step forward for Jennifer toward her new, independent life. Inside the house, life appeared routine. Jennifer Sheffield, accustomed to early mornings because of her work in intensive care, was likely already awake. She moved through the rooms, the kitchen, the living area, feeling safe. After all, she and Brandon had an agreement. They were a team. She believed in the illusion she herself had built, the idea of a perfect divorce, where two people part ways while preserving respect. Brandon Sheffield was also in the house. For him, the morning carried a very different weight. While Jennifer was planning a future after him, he was likely watching his own world fall apart. The single status on social media, his wife's conversations about moving, her calm confidence, Everything that, to Jennifer, signaled civility and maturity became unbearable proof to Brandon that control was slipping away. In that quiet morning, the mask of the fun guy and life of the party finally dropped, revealing a depth of despair and anger underneath. What followed happened fast. There were no prolonged screams echoing through the neighborhood, no crashing dishes. The escalation took minutes, maybe seconds. At some point, during a conversation or simply passing through the house, Brandon made a decision to stop time. He reached for a weapon. Jennifer, likely focused on everyday tasks, did not expect what came next. The man she had lived with for 10 years, the man she trusted, pulled the trigger. An overwhelming silence settled over the house. Jennifer's plans to buy a home, her dream of becoming a physician, her care for Gracie and Kylie, everything ended in an instant. Immediately afterward, Brandon ended his own life through self-harm, completing a scenario that left no way back. Around midday, the stillness of the suburb was broken by the sound of engines. Relatives began arriving at the house. The visit had been planned, perhaps to pick up Gracie and Kylie or to talk through family matters. Cars pulled into the driveway near the garage. People stepped out, smiling, expecting the familiar warmth of a family visit. They walked up to the door. A knock. Silence. Another knock. Louder this time. Still nothing. Jennifer's and Brandon's vehicles were parked outside, a clear sign they were home. Relatives began calling their cell phones. Through locked doors and windows, the sound of ringtones echoed inside the empty rooms. Call after call, ring after ring. No one declined the calls, Moen. But no one answered. The concern on the front porch turned into fear. Someone peered through the windows, searching for any sign of movement. Someone else pulled on the door handle, hoping it might be unlocked. But the house was secured from the inside, guarding its terrifying secret. After some time, when it became clear that there was no logical explanation for the silence, a trembling hand dialed the emergency services. The official investigation in Brandon, Mississippi, has now been closed. Law enforcement sealed the case, following the death of the only suspect. From a legal standpoint, the story ended the moment the coroner recorded the time of death. But for Gracie and Kylie, Brandon's daughters, the consequences of that night became a new and permanent reality. The girls, whom Jennifer had raised as her own, were left without parents and are now in the care of relatives. In the public sphere, only one digital artifact remains from this story. The video dated December 10th. The clip in which Jennifer smiles, talks about plans to buy a house, and calls the man who would later commit the crime an incredible person, was never taken down. Today, that content is no longer seen as a lifestyle vlog, but as documentary evidence of a fatal misjudgment. This case became a harsh reminder of how deceptive the image presented on social media can be. Thousands of viewers watched what appeared to be a perfect divorce unfold in real time, unaware that they were witnessing a chronicle of events leading toward a deadly outcome. The change of relationship status to single on Facebook, which the audience perceived as a routine formality, became, in reality, the trigger for Brandon.